Good day, everyone. Welcome to CalcuMind. We are going to continue from where our last video stopped, and we were asked to find in the second part of the question the mean using the guessed mean method or the assumed mean method. Now, one thing to note is that when you're told to find mean using the guessed mean method, the formula is equal to A plus summation FD all over N. Now, we need to know what A signifies and what D signifies. Now, simply put, A is the assumed mean. Of the distribution or the guessed mean, like the question implies. Now, the assumed mean is simply the summation of the class mark all divided by the total number of values in the class mark, which is equal to 72.5. Now we have D, and D is equal to the deviation from the mean, from the assumed mean. So we have in our formula that using the guessed mean method, X, which is the mean, is equal to A, assumed mean, plus summation F, frequency, multiplied by D, which is the deviation from the assumed mean, all divided by N, which is the total number of values in the column. So in our table here, we have our speed occupying one column, we have our class mark. Now, as a recap, remember that to get class mark, you simply add the two values in the class interval and you divide it by 2. So it's simply a mean of the class interval that you are operating on at that particular instant. Then we have our frequency, we have our deviation, which we are going to solve for, and we have our FD. So for our deviation, we have it as X minus A. Now this X here is simply the class mark. So our deviation for the first class interval will be X, which is the class mark for the first interval, which is 62.5, subtracted with 72.5, which is our assumed mean. So we have that 62.5 minus 72.5, giving us minus 10 as our first deviation. For the second class interval, we have 67.5, which is our class mark for the second interval, minus our assumed mean, which is 72.5, giving us minus 5. For the third class interval, we repeat the process, 72.5 minus 72.5, giving us 0. For the fourth class interval, we have our class mark 77.5 being subtracted with our assumed mean 72.5, giving us 5. And for the last one, we have our class mark for this last class interval, it's 2.5, being subtracted with our assumed mean 72.5 to give us 10. Then the final column, which is our FD, is simply a multiplication of the frequency of the particular class interval you're working on with the deviation from the assumed mean of that class interval. So we have our FD for our first class interval being 5, being the frequency F, multiplied by minus 10, being the deviation D. So this will give us minus 50. Then for the second one, we have minus 5 multiplying 18 to give us minus 90. We have 42 multiplying 0, which we know is 0. We have 27 multiplying 5 to give us 135. And finally, we have 8 multiplying 10 to give us 80. Now, recall from our formula, which we put on the board previously, that the mean is equal to the assumed mean plus the summation of FD, which is this column here, all divided by N. So we're going to clean. Now let's recall that the formula for guessed mean is A plus summation FD all over summation N. Let's put this in a bracket. Now we know that A is our assumed mean, which we got to where A being our assumed mean, which we got to be 72.5, For those who have forgotten, we got it by adding the class mark and dividing it by 5, which is the total number of values in the class mark, plus our summation FD is simply the addition of all the values of this column, which will give us 75. And our summation N is simply the summation of the frequency. That's the total frequency of this distribution. So we have it as 100. Therefore, we have, this should be X. X is equal to 72.5. So we have that X is equal to 72.5 plus 0.75. So we have X being equal to 73.25. Therefore, to find mean using the guess mean method in this given problem, we have that our mean is equal to 73.25. Thank you very much. Please do like, share, and subscribe.